Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Let's discuss the free agent frenzy that was or wasn't for the New York Rangers. Not a super eventful July 1st for Chris Drury and the Rangers, but a couple of transactions were made. One trade, which is the bigger topic, and then one signing. And I guess where I'll start with is what hasn't happened yet. There's been a lot of rumors about Jacob Trouba being on his way out. Now, ideally, that would be via trade, and I say that with some slight hesitation, but there were rumors. I mean, Larry Brooks had reported that there was a potential deal in place with the Detroit Red Wings in which the Rangers would retain about $2.5 million of that $8 million cap hit of Jacob Trouba. But nothing has come to fruition. There were reports out there that Trouba was, a bit caught off guard by this, which, I don't know how he could be that caught off guard by it. It's like, look, that's the business. I mean, even if he had valid reasons, these are things that happen. His no move clause turns into a limited no trade clause. And so I would expect Trouba to not, come opening night, I'd be surprised if Jacob Trouba's a Ranger. Where it goes from here, I'm not exactly sure. I would expect something to happen relatively soon. Right? I wouldn't think that this drags out much longer. I mean, it just gets to a point where if you're Trouba, it's like, why would you even, look, if they want him out, then it's kind of like, what good does it do him sticking around? I understand there's family implications with his wife, and I get all that, but he doesn't have a no move clause. So there's, Drury is going to be able to kind of do essentially what he needs to do. And look, if that means him being placed on waivers like Barclay Goodrow, that isn't out of the complete realm of possibility either. That could happen. And so if you're Trouba, it's like, let's just say that Detroit, it's like, hey, we have a trade with Detroit, and you can go there, or you can deny that and revoke it, and we'll just put you on waivers, and you might end up in San Jose. You know what I'm saying? So it's somewhat similar with Ryan McDonough a few years ago. Now, ironically, McDonough's back with the Tampa Bay Lightning now, but they told him, they said, hey, we have a trade, we can waive you. And I think if they waived him, he would have ended up in Columbus. Or we have a trade with Nashville, and we can, trade you there. And so that was the decision that was made. So he was traded to the Predators, but he was going to be waived. And so with Trouba, I don't, my gut tells me that this ends up in a trade. I just think it's in the best interest of kind of both sides, but it's definitely something to look at. And I feel like that, for me, was kind of the big sort of thought with the activity that was going on, last few days and today, and nothing ultimately happened. It seemed like, I guess, during the draft, it seemed like we're kind of picking up, and then all of a sudden it kind of lost some steam. So right now it's kind of at a standstill, but don't be surprised if I'm back on here, and I hope I am, discussing an episode in which Jacob Trouba is no longer a New York Ranger. But for now, we'll have to hold off on that. But like I said, Rangers make a couple of moves, and it appears as if they're done for the day. I mean, Chris Drury spoke to the media. Wouldn't really expect much else to happen. What I would expect for, though, is in the coming days, a little bit more Hartford-related transactions. We've seen that in the past. And I remember last year there was a slew of July 1st signings. And I'm not even talking about the ones that were more prominent for the Rangers, like Blake Wheeler, Eric Gustafson, Tyler Pitlick. There was beyond that, Riley Nash and Alex Belzile, Connor Mackey. They really did a lot of that. So I would expect, to have that come through in the coming days here, maybe as soon as tomorrow. But yeah, the big move today, one of two moves, was the Rangers acquiring right winger Reilly Smith from the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins retain 25% of his $5 million cap hit. So the Rangers will be paying $3.75 million of that. And he's a unrestricted free agent after the season. So it's a one-year situation for Reilly Smith, the younger brother of former Ranger Brendan Smith. And in exchange, the Rangers trade a 2027 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick, and it will be the worst of two picks between the Rangers' own pick and the Minnesota Wild pick in the Ryan Reeves trade. So a lot to unpack here. This is a player that the Rangers had been linked to for a while. I suspect that they were probably in some discussions with the Penguins at the trade deadline for the services of Reilly Smith, and even probably dating back to his time in Vegas. Reilly Smith, we'll get into his career, but what I don't love is the trading of the second-round pick. So now they don't have a second-round pick in 25, 26, or 27. Let's date back to 21. The only second-round pick that they've had since 2021 was a second-round pick in 2022. That was the Adam Sikora pick. So potentially, now there's a decent chance that they'll replenish, I wouldn't be surprised within that time if they get a second-round pick back along the way. But for now, that would be from 2021 to 2027, only having one second-round pick. That's not great, and maybe that is somewhat, but maybe the Rangers' hierarchy, maybe there is a belief system that, hey, we can afford to get rid of the second-round picks. Maybe they don't place a premium on round two picks. And there probably is a pretty big dividing line between, the first round and the second round. I would think that it probably depends on the year, but still, that I don't love. I feel like the Rangers have been trading away too many draft picks lately, but the fifth round pick, not a huge deal. And again, it's the worst of the two in this coming draft. I guess the one good thing is it's for that second round pick, it's good or it's bad. It's 2027. So it's not something you have to deal with in the interim, but in some ways, in theory, the Rangers draft pick could become better for Pittsburgh if the Rangers do decline from now until then. But that's here nor there. What is good about this is that there's no long-term risk to it. And to be honest with you, paying 3 points, when it was first reported, if that was for the full $5 million, I'd have a little more of a problem. But at $3.75 million, that's a fair price for Reilly Smith. And so I think that they were not able to land certain players. Clearly, that was something they were looking for, a top six winger, and I would define Reilly Smith as a top six winger. We can be conservative and say top nine. That's fair. Certainly on this team, if he's a right wing, he's going to be in the top six, really, no doubt. But for Smith, look, it came down to a situation where there was talk about Patrick Kane. I really didn't want Patrick Kane back. I was happy. He re-signed with the Detroit Red Wings. Elliot Friedman had Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Toffoli linked to the Rangers. Teravainen ends up going back to Chicago from Carolina. He signs a 3-year contract with the Blackhawks. I would have been okay with that. Although I don't think that would have necessarily, not that Smith does this either, but I don't think Teravainen would have pushed them forward in a huge way. But again, it's tough anyway. If you're not getting the Jake Gensels of the world, you kind of do, that's going to be the case. So Gensel ends up going to the Lightning. And so a lot of musical chairs. I'm not going to get into the whole NHL landscape, but I will say the Nashville Predators, pretty big day for them, getting Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Brady Shea, some pretty big moves for them. So, but yeah, once the Rangers, weren't able to kind of get Gensel, and to a lesser extent Kane, although I'm glad they stayed away from that. It became clear that they were not really able to sign someone. Someone that's still out there, although I don't think this is going to happen, nor do I really want it to anymore, is Vlad Tarasenko, as we speak, is kind of one of the fewer bigger name free agents out there, if you will. But I think that time has kind of come and gone. I wouldn't expect that reunion to occur. But yeah, Reilly Smith comes in via trade. Let's talk about Reilly Smith. And coming off of a little bit of a down year with the Pittsburgh Penguins, but hey, that's kind of how these trades happen. If Reilly Smith didn't have a down year, there's a good chance he'd still be with Pittsburgh. It's not as if he was bad last year. 76 games, 13 goals, 27 assists, 40 points. And he has cup winning experience, which I think is key, especially when you consider, look, Barclay Goodrow's out the door. So in terms of cup winners on this team, the only one that's coming to mind for me right now is Jonathan Quick. And that's a completely different situation. So not that it's like a prerequisite to have a cup winner, but it is good. And I apologize if I'm forgetting anyone, but I don't think I am. And Reilly Smith recently won in 2023 with Vegas. He was part of the Misfits. He was an original Vegas member. So Reilly Smith's had um, a pretty damn good career. And he started out with the Dallas Stars as a young player, but was traded, and there was promise for Reilly Smith. And he was traded to the Boston Bruins in the Tyler Seguin trade and really took off with Boston. And maybe took off as strong, but really developed, I guess, more so than we'd seen with the Dallas Stars. Was with the Bruins for a couple of years. And then I think it was via trade. Let's see. Yes. He was traded to the Florida Panthers. And there spent a couple seasons with the Panthers. It was actually a teammate of Vincent Trocheck. And so I kind of find that just a little bit interesting. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, look, Smith right now is probably penciled in with Kreider and Zibanejad. But, and I don't know if there's any Panthers fans out there who would maybe remember, were Trocheck and Smith on the same line at all in those 2 years? Like, I don't imagine that there's a decent chance that they might have been. And Smith, put up he was putting up 50-point seasons at that time. And honestly, what I'm impressed with Smith, the playoff numbers just statistically are pretty good. And Reilly Smith, mostly in his career, is mostly a plus player. Now, plus minus can be misleading, but like for the most part, except for that final year with the Panthers, and I'm not going to count his 3 games as a first year player with the Stars. This is someone who has a career plus 127. Played 140 games, but really he was part of where Reilly Smith really makes a name for himself is Vegas. And I guess the ironic thing there is obviously he had experience with Gerard Gallant, who's no longer here with the Rangers, of course, but he spends 6 seasons with the Golden Knights, and he's on a line with the previously mentioned Marchessault and William Karlsson. That was like the main line, and Smith was a leader on that team, a core member of that team. And yeah, like really, in some ways, is an underrated career. Now, look, he's getting older now. He is, 33 years old. But, I think that he still has game. He's going to be a free agent, so there's that extra motivation. I think Penguins fans felt like I think he got up to a hot start, and then once the Penguins kind of dipped, he did as well. And so, it's kind of funny, like Brendan Smith, like the same thing with Brendan Smith as well, where it's like, I think at certain points of Smith's career, if we remember, like he was a high intensity team guy, but there was also times when it felt like the motivation did kind of take a bit of a turn. And so for Smith, going from Vegas, where he won, coming off a cup and going to Pittsburgh and things kind of not going the way he wanted to, I guess I can understand it. And I think for this trade to happen, I think there was a bit of a no trade clause. So he did have to approve this. The funny thing is today, Brendan Smith signs with the Stars, who Reilly Smith used to be on, and Reilly Smith signs with the Rangers, who Brendan Smith used to be on. So this is not at the same time, of course, but a pair of brothers on the Rangers, the first since the Stahl brothers, Mark and Eric, to be on the New York Rangers. But yeah, so for Smith, I don't have a big problem with it. Again, I don't love getting rid of the second round pick. That is something that I'm not happy about. But in terms of, look, with Shesterkin, Lafreniere, and Keandre Miller, very likely due for some pretty big raises next season. Drury's in a tough spot. And so he had to just think about, and that's kind of what's been happening if you think about it recently, whether it be trade deadlines or July 1st or free agent frenzy. The only one, and this was a great signing, was really of true long-term. We're going to talk about another move that was made, but like a real substantial move was Vincent Trocheck. Now, the other one that comes to mind the year before that was Barclay Goodrow. Now, that one didn't exactly work out. And you know what? You find that in most cases, it is best to stay away from these free agents. I mean, look, in the case of Trocheck, it was well worth it. But in most of the time, you find that it's not really a good decision to hand out big money in unrestricted free agency. But anyway, yeah, so for Smith, he is going to be a big part of this team, and you hope that he is a lot better And look, there's every reason to believe that he'd be better than Blake Wheeler, Jack Roslovic, Capo Caco. And look, like, I think the stats prove that out. The contract, like the cap hit says so, the resume says so. This is a bit of it's a step up. I don't think anyone's really excited about Reilly Smith, but at the same time, like, if he doesn't perform well, like, I'll be disappointed. There's a little bit of an expectation here. So that's part of that's the big move today. But then also Sam Carrick signs a 3-year deal, and I guess for that, that's a little bit of a head scratcher, but it's a $1 million cap hit for each of the. It's a $1 million cap hit, so that's something that you can easily get rid of. So there's not, like, the 3 years isn't risky. Think about this, and this isn't necessarily me forecasting the result of what will happen, but when I think about this in recent years, Carrick is kind of taking on a role at this time of year, going into, like, at the start of the offseason. Kind of like what we saw last year, whether it be like Nick Bonino or Tyler Pitlick. The year before that with Ryan Carpenter. A few years before that with Kevin Rooney. And some of these had varying results. Like, Kevin Rooney wasn't a good Ranger, but that ended up kind of being a signing that, look, I mean, just in terms of games played, now maybe that speaks to the lack of depth on the team, but that ended up being okay. And don't get that misconstrued. Whereas Nick Bonino ended up being an absolute, that just didn't work out. Tyler Pitlick, same sort of thing. Ryan Carpenter, same sort of thing. So my point here with Carrick is he could be kind of just as easily gone just as soon as he comes in. But I think what Drury has done, and we've seen, is they target, I mean, this is an obvious statement, they target certain players. I think they've wanted Reilly Smith, and clearly with Sam Carrick, there's something they like there, because to me, the dead giveaway is the 3-year contract. Because if not for that 3-year contract, I would be thinking to myself, well, he's likely slated for the NHL, but maybe he does start the AHL. With this, the point I'm trying to make here is, even if he has a rough training camp, I think that he's pretty much locked in for that opening night roster. Now, will he last there? Not necessarily. But I think with Carrick, let's discuss him. So he was just with the Edmonton Oilers. He was picked up via trade from the Anaheim Ducks. He had been with the Ducks actually for a while. Was he undrafted? No, he was drafted, actually. He was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, but didn't really play much with them, with the NHL club. He did in 2015, 2016, barely. And then kind of bounced around. We didn't really see him again in the NHL until the 18-19 season, and even that was sporadic. It's kind of a I think he's a bit of a, maybe fan favorite strong, but you can tell that, like, Ducks fans and Oilers fans and maybe even Leafs fans too kind of respect the journey that he's taken, where this was someone that really didn't find a real true NHL role, I'd say, until 21, 22. It took time. And he's 32 years old, and really finally, that's when I would say he scores 11 goals in 64 games, which isn't terrible. But yeah, this past season, he gets traded from the Ducks to the Oilers. I believe that was he was in the Adam Henrique deal. I'm pretty sure it was that deal. And, ends up playing 10 playoff games. I remember him playing in some of the Cup final games. It was kind of within the 7 games. I didn't check the game logs, but I would assume that it was probably about close to 50-50. Maybe 3 games on, 4 off kind of thing. So yeah, he wasn't a regular, but he ultimately played a total of 76 regular season games last year, 61 with the Ducks, 16 with the Oilers. Look, this isn't a great player, but it does seem like there's versatility. I think right now he's probably your 4th-line center, because what the Rangers do have, they have a lot of wingers depth-wise. They don't really, with Goodrow gone, they don't really have many center options. So I think that's kind of your 4th-line center currently is Sam Carrick. And he's someone that isn't afraid to, he isn't afraid to drop the gloves. He's good on faceoffs. And so that could be too. He's a right-handed shot, good on faceoffs. So there is some value there. He can kill penalties. I don't think that he'll be a top penalty kill guy, but I think he could be in that mix. So it's not as if the guy is a complete dud at all. I think he's a hardworking guy, can provide some energy and some physicality at a cheaper price. And so that's what Sam Carrick is. Nothing more, nothing less. 3-year contract. and with a cap hit of $1 million. So not nothing, right? Because you remember last year, tons and tons of, coming in at like, 800K type contracts, whether it be Gustafson, Pitlick, Bonino, all those guys. And again, and they did give him, so like my inkling is that they do like Sam Carrick as something more than just throwing another body into the mix. So yeah, so those are your moves. And just a couple of departures, which was not surprising. Eric Gustafson does sign a 2-year contract with the Detroit Red Wings, and that was worth $2 million on that kind of. So pretty affordable, like not a bad signing for Detroit. Not something I wanted the Rangers to really do. I think it just made sense, to let him go. And then Alex Wenberg signs a 2-year contract with a $5 million cap hit with the San Jose Sharks. It's kind of crazy. I mean, that's why. I mean, the Sharks are a team that's really, they don't have that. I spoke about it when it came to Goodrow. There's no way Wenberg would have gotten that contract from like just about anyone else. Good for him. And I think that he is someone that is always kind of valued around the league. He is a centerman who is defensively responsible. So Wenberg was always going to get more than what would meet the eye. But even that is a bit of that's a lot, but it's the circumstance behind it. Still no word on Jack Roslovic. Trying to think if there was any other Ranger UFAs. I think it was just those two. I think it was just Gustafson. Because again, there really weren't that many, to be honest with you. So I think it was just Gustafson who goes to Detroit and Wenberg who goes to San Jose. And so now we wait and see, because I still feel like the biggest news is yet to come, would be my guess. But there's no definite way of knowing what will be next and when will it be. But I think Trouba is the one that we're all waiting on. And I think once that does happen, chances are the Rangers will then need to kind of address the defense, right? So what's happening here is I think the forwards, you kind of know what you're getting, I would say. Like, look, could Kako be traded? Yes. But I think with the forwards, you kind of have an idea. Defense, to me, is a complete unknown at this point in many, many ways. Even combined in the sense of, I would assume Ryan Lindgren will be extended, but even that, like, you don't know totally. Braden Shen is also a restricted free agent. So I think that, and honestly, as much as I think that offensively the Rangers could use improvements, I think the defense needs that real overhaul. Like, that's the thing that needs to be addressed, quite frankly. Yeah, like I would say Nate Schmidt is probably the best unrestricted free agent currently out there. But that's it. And even that isn't anything too crazy. So I would think that if Trouba is gone, you would think that they would try to acquire a defenseman via trade. That would be my guess. It would almost feel definite, because unless, I don't know, I mean, just internally, I just don't think the options are there. Right? So you take Trouba away, and let's just say you have Lindgren, Fox, Miller, Schneider, Jones, XYZ. I don't know. I think that they would be trying to bring in someone, not drunken sailor, like replace the money in Trouba and do something ridiculous. I think just a sensible trade and kind of reallocate that money in a smart way. So I still think that this offseason, it's just begun. I definitely think there's a lot more to come, especially because of what was a relatively quiet July 1st. But again, just the two moves. Reilly Smith traded from the Penguins, so a divisional trade. And it's weird that the Rangers made that Chad Ruedel deal at the trade deadline with the Penguins as well. But Smith goes to the Rangers in exchange 2027 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick go to the Penguins. And then the Rangers sign fourth liner Sam Carrick, who had previously been with the Edmonton Oilers. That's a 3-year contract with a $1 million cap hit. And I should also mention for Reilly Smith, 25% retention from the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that comes in at $3.75 million for just this year, as he'll be a free agent after. So that's where we're at with the Rangers. We'll see what the next few days and weeks will have in store, because I think that Chris Drury still has a lot of important decisions to be made.